Welcome back, everybody. This week we're going to have a look at using chess.com and chess.com's feature Puzzle Rush to look at our tactics and training our tactics going forward. Now, there are a Puzzle Rush feature within chess.com, and there's also a Puzzle Rush feature in LeeChess.com, and we'll look at that next week. So this week, we're just going to look at what is available within chess.com as part of its Puzzle Rush series. So come and join me and let's see what Puzzle Rush can serve up. So this is what Puzzle Rush looks like in chess.com. You can see that there is a 3-minute Puzzle Rush, a 5-minute Puzzle Rush, and a survival. Now, I recommend you click on the survival. This gives you one chance. So if you get one wrong, you finish.
No. Go back and learn your lines again, Coach Carl.
It finishes straight away. But the difference with survival mode is that you've got more time to think. So I would always recommend beginners try survival mode first and get a good score in survival mode. And then when you want to play a little bit quicker, try the 5 minutes or the 3 minutes. But for now, we're going to have a look at survival mode. Okay, so get the countdown and off we go. And the way Puzzle Rush works is it will play a move and you have to look for the best move. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go a little bit slowly for these first puzzles, just so you can see what I'm thinking. And you can then apply this to your own chess. So as you can see, the knight has moved and it's attacking two pieces. It's attacking these two pieces. However, when that knight moved, it was no longer in front of the queen. And if you look around the board, you can see that that queen is undefended. The rook is attacking it. The rook is worth more than the queen, and therefore it's going to be rook takes queen. And that's the correct move. Now, the way survival works is it moves on to the next puzzle straight away. So as you can see, quick moved on to puzzle number 2, and it's made the move for white. So what I'm looking for is, well, what's white's move? Has white done anything to stop my threat? You should see that I have now got a battery which is threatening checkmate. And so straight away, I'm going to say checkmate. Move my queen, and that is that puzzle. Now, puzzle number 3. As you can see, pawn has come forward, it's attacking the rook. But our rook is looking at this square, and this is a checkmate pattern. The knight defends that square, so it will defend the rook, and it also attacks this square here, which means the king has no escape, because the rook will make sure that the king cannot escape on these squares. And my right click is not working very well. I need to get a new mouse. So rook checkmate. So now we'll look at the next puzzle, and we're seeing what can we do here. And if we look around, we notice that this pawn is stopping the black king from escaping. And then this bishop is also stopping the king from escaping. So what we need to do is find the check. And what check can we find? Queen to b8. Queen comes back. We can take that, and that's a checkmate. On to puzzle number 4. Again, we look around the board, scan. You can see that there is 3 pawns in front of the king. That gives you the clue that there might be a back rank checkmate. So in this position, we count the defenders and the attackers. And we look at this square and we notice that there are 2 defenders. And if we count our pieces, there's 3 attackers, which means we can take the rook knowing that it's going to lead to checkmate. And there's the checkmate. You might need to pause the video and check these patterns just to see the checkmate patterns that occur, because it is moving on quite quickly. We can see that the queen has moved forward. It's a check. There's only one move here. That's queen takes queen, and that is the winning move. Okay, looking at puzzle number 6. Puzzle number 6, we can see that the king is open on this diagonal. And the king is blocked in by these pieces, which means a queen check is going to lead to a checkmate. After the pawn moves, checkmate. Okay. So another puzzle which is similar. The king is vulnerable on this diagonal. In this case, it's slightly different. The king is blocked in by its own pieces here. Hopefully you've spotted this one. It's queen check mate. Now puzzle 8. And what I'm going to do at this stage is I'm going to pause, and then I'm going to come back a little bit later with some harder puzzles so you can see some harder puzzles. So you come back, and I've just made a mistake, and you'll notice that we have a 3 strikes and we are out. So when you get one wrong, it will put an X. And once you've got 3, it stops. So we're on to some slightly harder puzzle now. So I will explain some of these. So black has just taken the pawn, and it's white's move. So again, what we need to do is look around the board and see what we can find as a tactical resource. So the first thing that comes to mind is we've got the bishop attacking the rook. Now that is going to win material, and if you can't find anything else, that might be what we go for. But the reason for playing Puzzle Rush on survival mode is it gives you a little bit more time to think. So when you found one move, as you know with our checklist, what you want to do is see if you can find an even better move. So what we need to see is, can we find an even better move? So that pawn takes was just attacking a pawn. So we do the visual check and just count the pieces and the pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So equals pawns. We have got minor pieces, 2 against 2. There's queens are the same and the rooks are the same. So it's equal material at this stage. So unless we can find anything better, then it would suggest that bishop takes rook is going to win your material. But let's check before we do that move that there's nothing we're missing that black can do. So this bishop here is hitting granite. This bishop here is not doing anything. Is the queen doing anything? Not particularly. So it would look like, on face value, that the best move here would be bishop to take the rook. Let's play that move, and that's the best move. So what we did there was use the process of elimination, spending a little bit of time working out what the solution would be. This is the key to having a good score in Puzzle Rush. What people tend to do is play the first move that comes to their mind, and they don't get a very good puzzle rush score. So once you've got past the first easy ones, first 10 or so, they're relatively easy, unless you're an absolute beginner. They do get harder, and as they get harder, you need to spend a little bit more time on puzzle rush. So let's look at this one. And the king, if you look, the king has not got many escape squares. In fact, the king's got no escape squares. So when the king has got no escape squares, we look for a check, because that check will then be a checkmate. We can see that if we push this pawn, it's protected by this rook. So the correct move is pawn push, and that's a checkmate. Let's have a look at the next puzzle. Now this one is slightly difficult because you need to look at a few things. The first thing you need to think about is this pawn and whether your king can, if you know your pawn and king and pawn endings, your king can get into the square. And the square is by drawing the diagonal from the pawn and the king getting that square. So we know that that pawn isn't going to get through quickly, so we've got time to find another move. And if your spider senses are tingling, you should have spotted that we have got this bishop is attacking that pawn, but it's defended by this piece. However, if you remember your deflection tactics, we can deflect the rook onto that bishop by capturing it. The rook captures, and now we can take the pawn with our bishop to check, and it attacks the rook at the same time. Now we need to work out what our next move is, so don't rush straight away. We've already worked out that our king should be able to get into the square, so we should check. And what the quick way of checking is to check how many moves. One, 2, 3. Now, if you count your moves correctly, you should know that it takes 3 moves for the king to get there. But if you've got your spider senses set up, you'll notice that the bishop can capture the rook, then can come back to this square to cover the queening square. And that is the solution to the tactic. And it doesn't go to show the rest, it just ends there. But if you don't believe me, go back to that last puzzle, pause, and just see if you can work that out. Now, knight has just come in and it's attacking the queen. But if your spider senses were attuned, you've got 2 pieces attacking that square, only 1 defender. So what that means is queen takes pawn is a checkmate. Okay, now this one's looking slightly more difficult. Let's do the usual check. 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns, 4 pawns, equal pawns. 2 rooks against a rook and a knight. So black is up in material. So white needs to find something good here. So we need to look around the board and see what we can find. Hopefully you've spotted that knight fork is a double attack on the king and the rook. And the king the white king is defending that square. So after knight takes knight, after the knight check, the rook has the king has to move, and then the knight can capture the rook. Hopefully you can see that. Knight, king moves, knight capture. Okay, on to puzzle 19. Let's see this one. Again, we scan the board. White to move, 4 pawns for white and a queen. 4 pawns to black and a queen. So it's equal material, but can we spot a tactic here? And again, it's about looking at the king. And hopefully you can notice that the king cannot come to this square. So if we can do a check, that king is going to be either checkmated or very restrictive. And if you've spotted it, queen to this square is a check and also covers these 2 squares. And that will become a checkmate. There we are. Hopefully you're doing okay following these. As you can see, there's quite a lot of puzzles to get through. What I'm going to do is pause again and then come back a little bit later. Okay, we'll now come back and I'm on puzzle 30 just to make it a little bit harder. Now, I've got 30 puzzles here. You can see that there's a rating score as you get through harder puzzles. So for our queens and rooks players at the junior congresses, I would expect you to get to this level, if not beyond. So this will be your target. For anyone below the queens and rooks level, then your target will be to get to 30, and that will improve your chess as we go along. So let's see how we get on, and we'll just do a couple more puzzles. So straight away, I'm spotting a fork here, and it's a double attack, because it's a double attack of the queen onto the rook. So that's my first thought. And then what I need to do is work out if there's a way of getting a checkmate. I don't think there is, but we shall have a look. So the king is obviously going to move towards the knight, so it'll probably move to this square. Can we get a checkmate from that square? Well, there is another rook knight move here, which will be a check. So the king would have to go probably back. And that will defend the knight and means the queen can then take the rook and you are going to be up in material. So I think that might be our solution, but we need to make sure that we're moving the knight back again. See, the king attacks. Now it would be a mistake to take that rook because the king would take the knight and it would be equal material. But by coming up with another check first, we're going to win material. Okay. These puzzles now get a little bit harder. They tend to start including some endgames. So let's see if we can work out how to do this one. We can see that white has got 3 pawns against 2. Their most advanced pawn is here. It will probably be a bit of a mistake for rook to take rook because you've got a protected pass pawn. That king can probably come in to take these 2 pawns, and black will then have to worry about pawns on these pawns. Don't forget, when we're working through, pawns are going to be on these squares, and that this particular pawn here would be the most dangerous one for black to try and stop. And white, I think, would have enough time to complete the journey and gobble up pawns. So we need to find a better move. Now, is it going to be a rook check? Or is it going to be putting the rook somewhere else? This is an hard one. Not easy, this one. And this is why I prefer using survival mode. Allows you a lot more time to think. So I pause then to have a longer think and not have to waste too long on the video. Hopefully you paused as well. And now I had to rethink. One of the things I've had to rethink is that this pawn hasn't moved. So in theory, it can go to this square in one go. Straight away, I've spotted that that means that the king is outside of the square. So the king cannot stop that pawn from queening. I therefore need to work out if my king can stop this pawn from queening. And it's on a dark square and my king's already there. So by doing the diagonal, I can see that my king is already inside the square, and that is all I need to know at the moment, because this particular pawn has already moved, so can only go one square. So I'd count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to queen. And now count my moves. Rook takes, pawn takes, pawn to this square. That's the position. Okay, but it's white to move. So in my mind, I calculate it again. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, queen and check. And most importantly, it covers the diagonal and that pawn is not going to queen. So by spending my time working out and doing the calculations, I can work out that I can take and play. And now the king's moved, which means I've now got to be careful. And this again is where we pause. This is why I like the survival version of Puzzle Rush. So I'm going to pause the video, you pause as well, and have a think about what the best move is going to be here. Okay, hopefully you didn't have to think too long, but as we've said earlier, when we did our initial calculation, we said that this pawn was outside the square. So it still remains outside the square. So again, it does good to double check. 1 square, 2 squares, 3 squares, 4 squares to queen. Can the king capture it? 1, 2, 3. It takes 4 moves for the king to get to the square it needs to stop the pawn from queening. But it's black's move. So that means black can push the pawn. And we can carry on pushing the pawn because we know the queen's in the square. Okay, I'm going to call it quits there and ask you to, if you're using chess.com, give it a go on survival mode only. and see what your best score is. It would be good to see what comments you put in. Put in your best score when you reach the end. And let's see who can get the best score and what rating you are in Lancashire Juniors. Okay, next time I'm going to show you a similar puzzle rush, but on Lichess.com. Well, in the end, I didn't do very well. Nowhere near my best score, but it is rather hot today. It's 34 degrees Celsius in this room today as I'm recording this video, so I'm a little bit cooked. So hope you enjoyed that run through chess.com's puzzle rush, and I hope you go away and have a go at that puzzle rush. Chess.com is a paid for service, but you can join it for free and play some games and some puzzle rushes free of charge. Like I said, next week we'll look at Lichess.com, which is completely free, and we'll look at how the puzzle rush works there. Okay, if you like the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of our videos in the future. Bye for now.